Hello! Welcome, wonderful people, back to Pop Culture Therapy. I'm Advent Nebula.
And I'm Cruellica Kain.
So, this time we're going to be looking at nostalgia again, but very specifically a certain time frame from about 1996 to the 2006-2007 before reality TV and serialized shows, thanks to how cable and streaming started taking off. You kind of have a real weird cultural zeitgeist in this period.
We do, mainly because, one, around 96 is when the end of sitcoms occurred. Sitcoms still existed, and they still exist to this day, but not to the mainstream that they were. We actually got more crime dramas. Obviously, Law and Order existed before 96, and same thing with CSI, but more and more and more.
You had the spin-offs of popular shows start to really amp up.
Absolutely. Another thing that we got a lot of in this 10-year time period, which doesn't really exist as much anymore either, is teen dramas. It is in your face.
This doesn't exist any longer. Have you seen the CW?
Okay, to the degree it is now.
The CW is kind of in its own spectrum, separate from everything else really on TV.
Yeah, and then joining us this podcast is going to be unwillingly again Kaishu no Kami.
Because we love dragging him into nostalgia for some reason.
I know, or tokusatsu. I wonder why. Oh wow, you were so eager when you talked about teen drama for some reason. Now it's The reason we also brought him in is because there is another important factor that came to fruition in around the 1998 period. And it's kind of a 2-for-1. The first is Toonami.
Yep. That ended up becoming a gateway for a lot of the anime fans that did not start with Pokemon. And then on top of this time frame too, fan subbing, thanks to the internet, started becoming big. And you weren't having so much of the VHS fan subs anymore. God, I'm still old enough to remember starting on VHS fan subs.
Yeah.
Sailor Moon Stars.
Yeah.
Yes. And then another thing that actually came out of this era, along with that, is something that really started with The Simpsons, but apparently really didn't hit until around 97 with South Park. We got more adult animation. We had South Park, we had Family Guy, we had also claymation stuff with like Celebrity Deathmatch, we had Aeon Flux, we had so...
The Max.
Yep.
And we also got, as Kaiju had mentioned while we were planning this, CGI animated cartoons.
Yep, we had Reboot, Beast Wars, Voltron the Third Dimension, War Planets, Starship Troopers, Roughneck Chronicles. What was the other one I'm missing?
There's so many.
Yeah.
There's so many.
There's another one that was specific to that time frame, and I can't even think of it either.
So, in this 10-year span, this 10 to 12-year span, essentially, television changed significantly. I can't say for the rest of the world. I can only reference more so on the American side. But I do know Europe had a lot of changes as well, because you had the revival of revival of Doctor Who. And I know there was some changes with their shows, especially EastEnders and different things like that.
Space came out during this time frame.
Oh yes, Space. So you had Simon Pegg really become very popular outside of the Cornetto trilogy or the Mission Impossible series.
Mission?
Yes, Mission. But there was a lot of change with that. So it's always amazing because you're going to see a lot of the 90s isms if you go on like television and cartoons, or you're going to see a lot of strange anime choices because you had fan subs. You had fan subs that were like the underground thing, but the era of Toonami created mainstream versus underground anime. Even if they were super, super popular, think of a couple of examples at that moment in time would be Sailor Moon versus Dragon Ball. Sailor Moon, yes, the first 2 arcs had aired in the earlier 90s, but they went underground. Nothing was done about that until mid-2000s, where Dragon Ball was like right in your face.
And then on the fan sub side around this time, what's still going strong today, which is still one of the most popular properties, One Piece debuted in '99
in Japan.
and it was on the fan sub side forever.
Because we got the 4Kids adaptation that nobody liked.
Yeah.
And Yu-Gi-Oh premiered in 2000.
Oh yeah, and 4Kids picked it up not that long after.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that became a big boom, and then on the flip side, that was one of those that really harkened into the fan sub community because
And
of the anger
The
of 4Kids.
biggest anime ever,
Okay.
Pokemon,
Well, because that came out in what,
97.
Oh yeah, it did come
In
out in
America.
97. Oh my god, I was
Or
in high
96.
I was in high school when this show came out.
which
What? No!
is now aired over 2,000 episodes.
Yeah, it's still not the longest running anime,
Well, that's
but
because no one's going to beat Detective Conan.
No,
Doraemon.
Or yeah, Doraemon.
Doraemon, even with the hiatus Doraemon's on it, and Saze-san, another one that's never going to be beaten for its
Oh no,
length.
and on Super Crunchy, Shin Crane-chan is still up there.
No,
I thought that was up there still.
nope.
That was never up there.
I thought it was.
It had a bunch of episodes, but not like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, within, I would say, probably worldwide culture, because a lot of these shows are actually very popular internationally, just like they are here, when you have the British and you have the American sides. Because you also had a lot of the Italian animated series come out to the United States during this period of time,
Well, and-
with Twinks.
And then Totally Spies came out of
Yep.
France around this time.
Yeah, there was a lot of different changes in pop culture on the television side. Movies was still staying strong with this consistency, but television really changed because outside of the earlier 90s, you didn't have the same sitcom feel. And so what we wanted to reference here today, and this is why we unwillingly included Kaiji Okami, because we wanted to hear his choices, because he apparently has some obscure choices. And too bad Crystal Edge Bloodborne isn't here, because he would have some off-the-wall thoughts as well.
The one thing is, he was a weed knight during this time frame.
Okay.
Actually, I guess maybe Crane Shin-chan is still going.
That's what I thought. But
Because it has over 1,000 episodes.
I thought so. But nevertheless, let's talk about some of our favorite shows that we enjoyed. And because this is the era of Toonami, even though we knew it is anime, it's not like anime was as it is now, where we've watched so much. So anime is not off the table during this time period. So,
Good, because that's all I know.
Yeah. So, and I'm going to end up starting with one show that, and like when I was talking about Crystal Edge Bloodborne being a weed knight, Buffy and Angel I'm going to have to put together just as one, because really they are. That's one show that I ended up watching on UPN through its entire run for all 7 seasons of Buffy and all 5 seasons of Angel.
now I will say, definitely for me, I watched a lot of it as well. I don't think I could say I was as dedicated as many others. I really enjoyed Buffy over Angel.
Where I preferred Angel over Buffy.
Mainly because I was one of those few who loved the original Buffy movie. That while this movie is this television series is a loose sequel of...
/ reboot to the movie.
Yes, because they actually reference things that happen in the movie, but they don't look at it as we're additionally coming, or essentially coming off the movie.
Yeah, with Xander being the only character that truly, you could say, was in both.
Oh yeah, he was in both.
So,
Yeah.
are we just doing like a top list? Or
We're not really doing a
No,
top
it's
list.
not a
We're
top
just gonna
list.
talk about anything that comes to mind
now,
on this one.
can we also talk about stuff that we had that, like, we just ended up watching in those years, even if they hadn't been airing for the first time, like if it was on video?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because technically, if you think about it, if we reference Dragon Ball, because that's one of the shows I watched in the Toonami era, because I actually started watching it.
I watched most of it until I had some CDs that let me see the Boo Saga in advance.
Go to hell! I bought those CDs.
Some fan subs that you had to watch in the smallest screen size possible to actually be able to see the video, because if you expanded it bigger, it became like watching wrestling on pay-per-view, that you didn't actually pay for the pay-per-view.
As we referenced in our last podcast, we're going to talk about the world of the internet and the world of piracy or fan subbing in the early 2000s.
Hey, and 2003 is also when I got into Toku. Because that's when we watched Hurricane Ranger, Gao Ranger, Kamen Rider Ryuki.
And that's a really good point, because at that time we didn't look at it solely as just Japanese stuff. One series, if I had to name my favorite series of that time period, was Reboot. I watched that show religiously from start to finish. I loved the story of Reboot. I wasn't always a fan of the CGI, but I was a fan of the combination of obviously being a kid show, so I had to have some of those kid type elements, but it also had such mature ways of telling the story.
And it's one of those shows that even as an adult you watch it and it's still highly enjoyable because the writing and acting were so solid.
Absolutely. And
the animation may not have held up, but everything else about it has held up significantly well.
And having a villain like Megabyte, how can you go wrong? He was a great, great villain in my opinion. And one of my favorite episodes still to this day is the Evil Dead like video game world that they were in.
That's like the only episode I remember that wasn't from season 3 when Chip or Gizmo, what was his name?
Gizmo.
When he was an adult.
Yeah. So, what about you? What is one of the shows that you watched during this period?
Since I already talked about gargoyles during the previous nostalgia episode, I'm going to go with the DC animated universe.
Okay.
Because during that time, that decade, is when you had Superman the animated series, Batman Beyond, Justice League, and Justice League Unlimited.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all those shows just were the epitome of how good of a writer Bruce Timm was and the team he assembled on those shows.
Bruce Timm, Dwayne McDuffie, why can't I think of his name now? Chip, I can't think of it. But yeah, all of those guys, it's like when you get people that truly cared about the source material doing these TV shows, and that was the result. Like with Superman, you had the ongoing stuff with Darkseid throughout the entire series. For Justice League, where you did, or Batman Beyond, when it was this really cool futuristic take on what Gotham would be like in the future with
a true cyberpunk Gotham too.
That, and you had like the Royal Flush Gang made an appearance, who they were talking about how these are villains that are a family, so they accumulate new members over the decades, so they will always exist. And then when you'd have like Bane, where you saw him in a wheelchair, and all the newer villains that they brought in, like Ink, who is essentially the equivalent to Clayface. Kiare was the assassin. Spellbinder, and Shriek, who could master sound. And then, so yeah, it was a really good idea, even though towards the end it got a little bit iffy in quality. And then you had Justice League and Justice League Unlimited that went back and just did a crap ton of, brought in all these characters and stories you never thought you'd ever see done in animation.
Well, also around that too, when Dwayne McDuffie actually got to do his dream project with Static Shock as well.
Oh yeah, that came out around that time too.
Yeah, that's a DC animated thing as well.
Well, and the one thing I really appreciated about Static Shock is, one, I think it spoke about the diversity in heroes, because you had John from Green Lantern and Justice League. John Stewart. But you didn't have, it didn't feel like, at least at that time, there was a lot of diversity when it came to your heroes. Because you didn't even have a lot of diversity until really Justice League, when you got to see Wonder Woman or Hawkgirl or anything like that.
Or how about my favorite line from Flash? I'm the fastest, and that's why I'm the fastest man alive, Hawkgirl. That explains why you can't get a date. Yeah, hey!
And so having so much diversity in the writing, so much diversity in the characters. I love Batman. I love Batman the Animated Series. But it was nice to see so much more to the DC animated universe. And Warner Brothers did such a solid for all of that. The 90s to the early 2000s was really the era of DC and Warner Brothers.
Well, it's when they cared more about than just Batman. Because even though Batman the Animated Series was a highly successful show, it showed they were willing to take risks. They were willing to show other characters. Batman was not always featured as the main character in every Justice League episode.
No, and that's what really, I think, helped with that, because starting from around 89, where you had the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton, and then going all the way down to the end of the early 2000s, because even before Dark Knight really came into it, there was just so much diversity with it, and creativity at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I'm now going to end up going in on an anime side, and it was one of the first ones I watched fan sub, and it was the first one I started buying the DVDs for as it was coming out. And you guys actually just recently watched the Blu-ray release of it for the first time with Noir.
well, we watched it back then, though, too.
Actually, yes. I had...
Because we've had that on multiple platforms.
Well, I had a guy... When I worked at the library in 2001, I think it was...
Yep, because you started after I did.
A guy came in. I had a guy on the computer, and he's like, "Oh, you like anime? Have you checked out Noir?" No, so he gave me CD-ROMs of the entire, because I guess the entire series had just finished airing. He gave me CD-ROMs of this show. I went home. I watched like the first two put in the disc. Watched like the first 10 episodes in one sitting because of how awesome it was. And then when ADV announced the license, I bought those immediately, and now I finally got the Blu-rays. So yes, that was my second series I ever saw fan subbed.
What was your first?
Sailor Stars.
Oh, so Sailor Stars.
Yeah, Sailor Stars was it my first as well? Yes, it had to have
Because
been
it was
my
Sailor
first.
Stars, then I saw Noir, and then I saw Dragon Ball.
So mine was Sailor Stars, Inuyasha, and then Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah, Noir is just one of those shows that it amazes me just how well it holds up, not just in the storytelling, but the animation for being hand-drawn.
Well, it's one of the last hand-drawn series, which is why it looks so good in HD, because it was done on film, so they could upconvert or remaster it properly.
So for me, one of the series I really enjoyed in the early 2000s, it's actually a very short-run series. It disappointed me because it got canceled. But I liked it because it took on that almost like comedic, darker edge. It was actually called Dead Like Me.
I remember that show because that was such an awesome show.
I think it ran for 1 to 2 seasons.
It ran for 2 seasons on Showtime before it got the axe.
And basically, it's about an 18-year-old girl. Her name is George.
Killed by the Mirror satellite when it's coming back down to Earth.
And she becomes a Grim Reaper. And so, basically, there's all these dead people. And they're Grim Reapers because if they die in a certain way, if they live a certain way, and she was the youngest of them all, it was not an American show. I think it was Canadian and British.
It was a Canadian-British hybrid show that was made to air on Showtime that did not get to complete its full run.
But it was such a great show because it had very dry humor. It was so just ridiculous because you're seeing all these Grim Reapers and you're watching kind of sitcom-esque, but the early stages of what we got with serials, where it had almost a hybrid of episodic and a continuous storyline, and it was so great.
And one of the best characters was one of the elder Grim Reapers. I'm using this quotations. The guy was 23 when he died because he died in the Wild West because he got drunk and fell off his horse.
Yes, because everyone died so ridiculous. But for me, that was like a great highlight of how the changes of comedy were happening. Because before, comedy was just so straight, so proper. And then with like IT Crowd, Spaced, Dead Like Me, so many other shows, it took on that nuance of, the hell with it.
And the creator of Dead Like Me got a network show that actually suffered the same fate with Pushing Daisies later on.
Yep. Yeah, he tried it like 3 times, never succeeded. So what's another series for you, Kaiju?
Um,
Ooh, that rhymed.
Well, it's one it aired from like 92 to 98, but I didn't watch it until the early 2000s on DVD, and that was Highlander.
Oh yeah, but that still works because of when it aired. But yeah, you loved Highlander. Oh my God, you bought into it. I have ornaments still from the old Highlander show. Yeah, we still have them.
Oh.
I have them hidden away because I don't want them to break. But he's gotten a little almost like the decorative plates that came out back in that era. We have them with mini
It was also
ornaments.
It was also one of the first shows that they were doing this thing on their website where you could buy the whole series on their website, or you had to wait for each volume to hit stores every 6 months.
Yep, and you bought the whole series.
Yeah, so I bought the whole series right away. Well, I bought the first season, enjoyed the first season so much, I just went ahead and bought the other 5 seasons from their website. Because I'm like, I'm not going to wait the next 3 years to get the rest of the series from stores.
Yes, where Chrysalid was a Whedonhead, Highlander was all I heard about. It was that, and then when Tokusatsu really came out, I'm like, which is my bane?
One thing with the Highlander series, it had to be capped off by such a horrible final movie.
The movie could have been worse. It could have been Highlander 2.
We don't talk about the quickening.
But,
No.
well, the series was really good. I liked, even though it was kind of episodic, Season 3 I felt was the best because that one actually had more of a continuous story going on and thing. Especially, with Season 2, things got better when they brought in the Watchers, and you had the guy who plays Inferno and Beast Wars as the main guy in that. Then Season 6 got kind of weird because the Adrian Paul wasn't available to film most of the season, so they just had it with episodes that were with other Immortals, which was a cool idea, but also at the same time, sometimes you're like, but I want to see Adrian Paul. But it's a show that also got gypped on Blu-ray, because they released the first season on Blu-ray, and then they never released the whole thing, and I got rid of all the DVDs when the Blu-ray first came out, expecting the whole series would be put out on Blu-ray.
And it's one of those that it's kind of in a license limbo right now. Nobody knows what's going on.
But yeah, Highlander was a series that I got into right away. I bought the first movie and liked that so much. That's why then I went and got the series. And then I watched the second movie, which was like, ugh, what the hell?
Yeah.
But I saw the Renegade cut, so I've never seen the version where they were aliens. And then the third movie, which you should know it's horrible, it has Mario Van Peebles in it, because Mario Van Peebles is terrible and makes every movie bomb.
And there's a reason why he's not in very popular things.
He's like the 90s version of Tyrese Gibson.
Ow!
So on that note,
Oh.
and I like Tyrese Gibson, so you need to back off, but
So I'm going to go into another area of animation, and it is the adult animation, and it's because, mainly, I know who they're satirizing with South Park, considering I am from one of the towns of one of the creators. So I can actually relate to a lot of the stuff the earlier seasons were talking about with some of the standalone jokes when they weren't going political.
see, I was going to reference South Park as well, only because, I'm not originally from Colorado, so I can't comment in that regard. I was of an age. I watched the first episode as it aired.
How about having your guidance counselor be Mr. Lackey? And yes, Mr. Mackey is Mr. Lackey, my guidance counselor for middle school.
So when I watched South Park, because we watched when it first aired on not Cartoon Network, Comedy Central. And that, I loved the first couple of seasons. I've gotten out of it since then. I still enjoy it because I like Cartman and things like that. But the first few seasons, I really, really appreciate.
Yeah, I thought the first few seasons were the worst of the series.
Oh, you're so adorable.
I actually hated that show for the first several seasons. It wasn't until years later when I saw some of the later episodes, I was like, That one was actually kind of funny. I still love the Black Friday trilogy.
Oh, that is still one of their highlights of their writing. The way they can satirize on modern days, still keep topics relevant, but even when you go back and look at the political era or whatever they were making fun of at a certain point, you're like, I remember that. They had a valid point.
But so, yeah, the Black Friday, especially being someone who worked in retail, having to deal with Black Friday, that's sometimes what it feels like. Helm's Deep! Keep those orcs out!
So for me, going into the anime routes, being that I was a little bit older when the era of Toonami happened, I still watched it. I had to watch it random times because I had to record everything because I was hanging out with friends and I didn't want to seem like I was a nerd, even though they all knew.
Toonami, when it first premiered, you had Thundercats at 4.
Mm-hmm.
Robotech.
No. From 4:30 to 4:45 was one of those 15-minute shorts. 4:45 to 5:15 was Voltron. 5:15 to 5:30 was like Battle of the Planets or whatever that short is of Gatchaman. And then 5:30 to 6 was The Real Adventures of Johnny Quest. After Voltron aired 2 cycles, then they went to Robotech, but they never aired the Invid Saga, which always pissed me off because it was like the frickin' episodes of Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z when you're all into the show and the next episode is the first episode all over again and you're like, what the hell is this?
Someday I'll be able to explain my pick, but thank you very much for that segue.
You can continue.
So the show I was going to reference is because when I first watched it, and then last year I rebought the entire series, or I got it all for Christmas actually. It was because I loved it so much, because Yusuke Hirameshi is always what I think of now when I think of a Grim Reaper. Even though I like Dead Like Me and I like other shows with Grim Reapers, Yusuke Hirameshi is definitely it, and the show I'm referencing is Yu Yu Hakusho. So that came out in the early 2000s in America, and it was one of those few shows after having watched DBZ, watching some of Blue Gender when that had aired, watching Gundam. This was finally one of those shows I'm like, okay, this has elements of horror, has elements of action. This is exactly what I wanted, because while I like mech shows, I'm not all into mech shows like others. So this was finally the show I desired.
And you gotta appreciate with their English script that they actually made teenagers talk like how teenagers talk.
They did. They were, and that's the one thing I really did appreciate, because in anime at that point for American dubbing, it wasn't bad. I will never say that, obviously.
Did you say American dumbing?
Dubbing.
It sounded like you said dubbing.
But nevertheless, it's improved leaps and bounds. You can definitely see the progression of how they've improved since the early series.
You have to watch Dragon Ball out of order to get the progression.
Yeah.
However, the one thing I really appreciated about it is, one, like you said, they did the script writing correctly, where they were able to connect the characters to those appropriate age groups. They also did the script writing to connect the story so very well to have all the characters be realistic for what they were doing. Because that was always the hard part I had with it. Like having Kai, having Botan, they could always be really easily seen off, but they weren't. And this was using the same voice cast as the original DBZ dub.
Yeah. Funimation back then did not have a large roster of actors.
Oh,
you
no.
mean the Funimation dub, not the original dub. The original dub would be Season 1 Pioneer.
That would be Ocean Group.
Yeah.
Yeah, Funimation dub, yes, that is correct. So the original Funimation dub team. And the reason I say it like that is because they had the original voice actress for Bulma, who was playing Botan in the series.
Yep. And Frieza's original voice actress was playing...
oh God!
The old lady.
Genkai.
Genkai, yeah. So yeah, you had a lot of great voice actors and actresses with it, and I love that series. I ate it up because I finally had something that I was like, yeah, this is my type of anime.
Angsty teen boys and their drama of kicking ass.
That makes me seem terrible, but yes, that's essentially it. I guess I like angsty teen boy shows. Who would have thunk it?
You are married to him.
Yeah, I have to say, for my anime, I love shoujo, like hardcore romance, even though I hate romantic movies. And then I love shonen series. And then top it off with yaoi, but... What?
The face palm he has
I
right
have
now.
broken my husband again. Honey, it's your turn. Honey, you're awake, right, honey?
Alright, well, I guess at that point, late 90s is really when I started getting into anime, and not just one series or whatever. Like, I saw Fatal Fury the motion picture on Sci-Fi Channel summer of 97, I think they aired it.
Yeah, I think they did, yeah.
No, summer of 98.
Because they also aired Demon City Shinjuku as well.
Yes, they aired. Yes.
Yes. I love
A very
that.
butchered edit of it.
I
But
know,
yes,
I love
they
the
aired
Because they
it.
showed Fatal Fury. No, I don't think that was part of that week, because they did the Galaxy Express movies.
Yep.
They also did the God Mars movie back then.
Oh, yeah, they did.
But so, and then after that, I went crazy for anime. So
Oh,
I rented Akira, Ghost in the Shell, Battle Angel Alita, MD Geist 1 and 2, Chimera,
He had no taste in that
Ninja
time.
Scroll, Ninja Resurrection,
It gets
Gundam
better.
0080, Vampire Hunter D. What else did I rent that's over that like
Rurouni Kenshin.
That was after.
Oh.
This is before I met you.
Oh, so before you actually finally got
Yeah, this is
taste?
the stuff that. So that's when I also got into Sailor Moon.
Well, at least he has some taste back then.
What was the other one I watched? Biohunter.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
like Biohunter.
Utena.
I can't agree with that one.
And
Except the dub was terrible.
oh, the dub's awful.
The dub is like, you could tell Central Park Media. These are, and with the dub back then, sorry to cut you off, but these are actors that now are heavily respected.
I know,
And
but
then-
CPM dubs were terrible.
And then the Gundam movie trilogy, where they would pronounce it as Gundam, and Steve Bloom was Char.
Which I don't agree with Char as being voiced
No.
by Steve Bloom.
And then then I would watch Voltron and Robotech on Toonami, and then Gundam Wing started, and then everyone in high school started to come to me as the anime guy because of how big into anime I was. You didn't even know me in high school.
No, I'm
I met
kidding.
you when I was starting college. So
No, I met you when you were still in high school.
No, you didn't.
Oh, no, I met you right when you graduated.
Yeah,
You were still 18.
I started working at the library on July 27th.
I met you before that, though.
Or no, you didn't.
Oh, no, I met your brother.
Because you walked up to me when I was on my lunch break at the computer, and you're like, "Oh, you must be Susan's son. I'm Kelly. I know your whole life story."
I literally said that. And he looked at me, and he turned back around, and he's like, no, we're done.
But yeah, and then you let me borrow the first tape to Slayers
And Master Moski-chan.
Yep, Master of Moski-tan.
Because you never wanted to watch Trouble Chocolate.
I know that one, but I didn't think you had that on DVD. But yeah, so I got into anime in late 90s, very late 90s, and then it just became an addiction. I've gotta have my fix, man! And then Evangelion came out on 8 DVDs, Bubblegum Crisis 2040, Gundam Wing. My first anime DVDs were The Night Warriors, Darkstalker's Revenge, 2 discs, 2 volumes. And Princess Mononoke, I got to see that in theaters.
Yeah, he basically didn't watch anything outside of anime and Godzilla movies. And then when we started dating is when, not long after, you got into tokusatsu.
I got into that in 2003. But, I did watch Beast Wars and Beast Machines.
So before he can corrupt the entire...
Yu-Gi-Oh!
Yeah.
Got into Yu-Gi-Oh! And Dragon Ball into the moon. Of course, Gundam, and Noir, and Rasafan, and Hellsing, and Cowboy Bebop, and Escaflowne.
I am not inviting him to any more of these.
Oh, you will be dragging him into another one, and you know
absolutely. All right, Advent, since he just named off the entire early 2000s catalog of anime.
I didn't name AD Police because I never saw that.
I just want Dirty Pair.
So I'm going to end up going with a show that nowadays I look back on why I watched it, but back then
There's quite a few.
it was just one of those shows that you just watched because it was just a cultural icon with friends.
Wing?
No Friends. Oh, God.
In which I now look at that show, it's like, how did I watch this crap?
Oh, I thought you meant when you said it was a cultural icon with friends. I thought you meant you were watching it with friends.
No,
the show Friends. That aired for about 10 seasons.
10 seasons, started in the mid-90s and ended in the early 2000s.
And it was, oh my.
And it's kind of what started the change in sitcoms, actually, if you think about it.
It did. I think that it's kind of what helped, like, almost end the traditional sitcoms, because sitcoms now are more comedy.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, sitcom means situational comedy. It feels like...
They all ripped off The Simpsons at that point?
Yes. Yeah. And now sitcoms are really taking on the element of being true comedies, because think of Parks and Rec and 30 Rock and things like that.
Big Bang Theory, as much as we detest it.
Absolutely. And so my next series is actually something that was created by the guy who did Big Bang Theory that I really enjoyed, mainly because Joseph Gordon-Levitt, we were close to the same age, so I kind of had a crush on him, I will admit.
It was the long hair, wasn't it?
Duh. I had a thing for long-haired men. Why do you think we started dating?
A certain actor off that show went to play a serial killer after its run.
Well, he also was Inspector Gadget. And the show we're talking about, before we get too far off, is Third Rock from the Sun.
Who was in that show that played a serial killer?
John Lovitz in Dexter. He wanted to become a serial killer in that show.
Oh.
And the one actor who played, oh God, I can't remember his name. He was Inspector Gadget for the sequel.
Yep.
Because the original Inspector Gadget was
Matthew Broderick.
And then
isn't Third Rock from the Sun where what's his name came from? The dude, oh God, the old guy with the white hair.
Yeah, that's John Lovitz.
No, that's not John Lovitz.
No.
Oh God, what's his name? But
oh my God, he's in Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
John Lithgow.
Yeah, Lithgow.
That's what
Yes.
Because French Stewart is who played
Inspector Gadget
in the sequel.
And then French Stewart nowadays just does screenwriting and directing, which it's kind of understandable with his acting career how it changed so much after his success with Third Rock from the Sun.
Well, yeah, no, it changed a lot.
It changed the career of everybody on that show.
Never watched that show.
I enjoyed the
show. Wait, that was from the guy who did Big Bang Theory, you said?
Yeah,
yes.
Chuck Lorre.
How the hell
did
that happen?
He also did Two and a Half Men.
God damn, does the guy actually know how to write any good shows?
Third Rock from the Sun was incredible.
They got William Shatner on that show to play the leader of their race.
William Shatner will show up on any show if you give him a paycheck. That dude has no standards.
Yeah, no, the reason why I love Third Rock from the Sun is because it harkened back to old sitcoms, but because it had this element of literally aliens from outer space playing, you had John Lithgow, who was the captain. You had, I can't remember her character name, but you had the female pilot from it, Kirsten Johnston, who played the eldest, and she was a man. French Stewart was playing, actually no, Joseph Gordon-Levitt was playing the eldest character on the team.
And he was stuck in the body of the child.
He was stuck in the child's body. And then Kirsten Johnston, who played Sally, she was actually also a man. So you had a full crew of male aliens in different bodies, the eldest being the child, and then one being a woman. And she came on very masculine. It was the one time that I was very impressed with storytelling, because they actually did what I thought was appropriate of writing her as a man and kind of looking as the gaze as a woman. And it was great for a 90s sitcom because I think they did a very similar thing, even though I wasn't a huge fan at the time, with Will and Grace, with the main actor who was very, very heterosexual. He has a ton of children, playing a very out and proud gay man. And while a lot of controversy came from that show, it still highlighted something that was so important that you can have that. So, what would be another show for you, Kaiju?
Well, I'm moving on to now is that was the time also when I got into tokusatsu.
Yeah, it's legit. You can count it.
And that's when,
because
my first shows were Gal Ranger with those crappy Hong Kong subtitles that I got from Animaniacs from this store in Colorado.
They have gone under on their website since.
But when I was living in Buffalo, I was like, I want to see Sentai. Got it? This is cool. Then I bought bootleg versions of Die Ranger, Jew Ranger. Well, obviously, they were all bootlegs at the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like, and I saw Die Ranger, and that became my favorite Sentai show right then and there, and has never been topped since. And then for Kamen Rider, it was Ryuki, and then Fives was airing, and I got the DVDs for Black, and slowly went from there.
Yeah, tokusatsu became our lives for many, many years.
Technically, it still is, but
that's very
because
true.
this whole channel technically is revolving around Toku.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Our channel is dedicated to tokusatsu and everything else.
Yep.
Tokusatsu became the norm.
Okay.
I'm also going to touch on another show that aired that same time as Friends and Third Rock from the Sun, but actually ran longer than the show it spun off from. Frasier.
Oh, yeah, it did last longer than Cheers, didn't it?
Yeah, 13 seasons as opposed to 11 that Cheers
Jesus
ran.
Christ. No show should last that long.
Tell that to Simpsons, who's around for what, 31 now?
We just had 31,
So
yes.
32 now.
But no show should run more than 8 seasons, 10 at the most. Ah.
But nevertheless, I did like Frasier.
I enjoyed Frasier. And his brother was probably one of the best characters on the entire show with Niles.
Niles, yes. I was like, Neil?
Sideshow Bob and...
Yes.
Kelsey Grammer, yeah.
Yeah, Sideshow Bob and Cecil.
Yeah, because Kelsey Grammer, truthfully was one of my favorite characters from Cheers. I liked him, and I liked Woody. Two very different sides of the spectrum, because you had the dumbass and the genius. But
So what show was that a spin-off of?
Cheers.
Cheers, yeah.
Frasier was a spin-off of Cheers.
Okay.
And it was a 4-year gap between when Cheers ended and Frasier came on, but...
Yeah, because in that 4-year gap is when he got divorced from his wife in the show.
Moved back to Seattle to do a radio talk show.
Did they ever have the characters from Cheers cross over?
Occasionally, yeah.
Woody came on. Christy Alley came on for a couple.
Woody Harrelson.
Yeah. Christy Allen came on for a couple episodes of it.
I think,
The actress that played Lilith came on for an entire season of Frasier.
Well, yeah, because there was this whole thing. I hated Lilith, honestly. I loved the name, but I hated the character. And I think for me, my favorite sitcom, true sitcom, outside of Third Rock from the Sun, that I loved, was Dharma and Greg.
Oh, God. The premise of this show is also where you also saw sitcoms were having a change at this point, too, just from the pilot.
So, there's an anime series I want to reference first, because Dharma and Greg is a perfect example of the flip side of this, even for our relationship with myself and Kaiju. So, there's an anime series that's called I Do Not Understand What My Husband Is Saying. She is a businesswoman. He's an otaku nerd. That fits kind of my lifestyle already, because he's no otaku. Dharma...
You're an otaku, too.
I mean the premise, because there are certain things that you talk about with Godzilla and tokusatsu that...
That's why he needs to watch Samurai Flamenco.
Oh, yes. There is... I actually want to live stream him watching a couple of the episodes. Nevertheless, Dharma and Greg is a flip side of that, where Dharma is this flighty...
Hippie-raised chick.
Hippie, and then you have her husband, who actually went on to play one of the main characters in a different like crime drama series, who is this super serious lawyer. And I love that dynamic in the series because for me, at least at that time with sitcoms, just like with Third Rock in the Sun, it was something I never saw before.
And she was Miss Little Flower Power, and he just could not understand her when she went on a hippie tangent.
No.
And then her mother.
It was basically, for me, it was a modern version of I Love Lucy. That's how I've always looked at it, except he was not Ricky. You have no idea what I'm talking about, do you?
Nope, he does not, and he is just shaking his head.
How about Laverne and Shirley? Happy Days?
That's with the guy with the leather coat, right?
Yeah.
Wow, you know Fonzie! Mainly because he jumped the shark, I think everybody knows.
And Ron Howard was
Well,
in.
because that was the guy that showed up in The Simpsons.
But kind
it's
of like
true.
Golden Girls, this was one of the shows that just made it for me in that era.
And Kaiju Man Valid Point, you can point the Simpsons to everything in pop culture nowadays.
Well, I think they were. I think Dharma and Greg were referenced in a episode, like a mini skit of Simpsons
If they
too.
were, I've never caught it. Because I would not know it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
So, what is your final choice of the late '90s to early 2000s?
Wow. First, when we were talking about the DC anime stuff, we forgot about Teen Titans. Because that was at the same time as well.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
it
it
was. I
was.
actually
But-
thought it was a little bit after.
No. Because it was airing the same time when Justice League was airing. Anyway, I've already talked about anime, already covered Toku, covered Highlander,
When did Animaniacs air?
early 90s.
Earlier
Oh.
than that.
Same with the Tomorrow People that I was thinking about, because
Oh.
that show doesn't get recognized a lot from Nickelodeon.
Well, you can't say this on television doesn't even exist anymore in anybody's minds.
Yeah.
No, what I'm going to go with is one of my favorite cartoon series that came out in 2001, I think.
I'm
It was
intrigued.
2002. Samurai Jack.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Because that show
I forgot that it came out
was
that year.
frickin' awesome.
Well, wasn't that done by Gennady?
Yes.
Tartakovsky? Yeah.
Because he also helped with Powerpuff Girls.
Mhm.
Which Powerpuff Girls I
And
probably
a few
should have
others.
mentioned, but... Oh, and Ben 10, right? Didn't he do Ben 10?
No.
No.
Oh, I thought he did.
Dexter.
Oh, okay.
But,
Oh, yeah, Dexter's
yes, well, that 96 is when we had the Cartoon Network's world premiere cartoon show, where they did all those episodes. You had Dexter's Lab, Johnny Bravo, Powerpuff Girls,
Lab. Cow and Chicken.
Cow and Chicken, Flick and Chick.
Billy and Mandy.
No, that was years later.
Yeah,
Really?
Billy and Mandy
Yeah.
was years later.
You had I just said Flick and Chick. This opossum story. You had actually I think Powerpuff Girls had 2 stories in the world premiere cartoon show. You had Courage the Cowardly Dog's very first episode with the chicken from outer space. You had oh my god. A bunch of these like cartoons they were just testing out with these pilots to see what would fly. Obviously we know which ones did.
Yeah.
And then we had Samurai Jack coming into 2001, 2002, which was awesome because it did cinema in cartoons before cartoons went cinematic. It had the best sound design of any cartoon at the time, and still has some of the best sound design. Period.
And there's another show that I'll bring up that aired right around with Samurai Jack, and that was Mega's XLR.
I was just thinking about that show. I was just looking up to say, okay, what year was Megas? 2004, because Megas XLR was
Only lasted 2 seasons.
a slap in the face because it referenced anime, it referenced every
it
mech
referenced
show,
everything that was
Marvel, DC.
It referenced everything that was big in pop culture at the time.
Yeah, it was like, let's take what's popular with pop culture and satirize it the best we can.
Absolutely.
The DMV episode is still my favorite episode.
Sailor Moon.
Yeah, mine is the one with the Sailor Moon type girls, especially when they're all transforming and the main one is just going on, and the girls are just looking like, come on.
And the worst part about this, for anyone who doesn't know this show, is that it aired, it existed, we lived off of it, and it's never been released on DVD.
And to think you had Wendy Lee, Steve Bloom in the show.
Well, you also had Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
He played MODOK.
Yeah, he played their version of MODOK.
Yeah.
But yeah, Samurai Jack was such a great show. It was a crime that took them like 15 years to actually make the ending to it. Now I still have to rewatch the whole series from start to finish. But and then you had Mako, who's phenomenal as Aku, especially like when he would call for pizza and stuff.
I want it extra thick.
Or the fairy tales episode when he's doing his fairy tales to kids.
Oh my god. So, on that note, once again, we've proven that the zeitgeist for culture in television changed dramatically. The next nostalgia one that I would like to do, probably not going to be right away, but soon, is I want to reference 2007 to present. The reason why I say that is because since then, I don't feel nothing has really changed in television to create a new era at this point.
Yeah.
What?
Streaming.
We talked about TV now becoming serialized.
Well, no, we talked about the fact that serialized dramas exist during this period because you have serialized drama from 2007 on forward, the rise, because reality TV started in the late 90s with like The Real World, Simple Life, Survivor, but now reality TV is everywhere.
Yeah, you have the Real
Well,
Housewives.
and then also though TV was also changed because that's also when shows really started becoming in the HD era.
And also, the other thing that we'll talk about in our next nostalgia episode, kind of nostalgious, but we're dealing with the modern era, is going to be, as you referenced, streaming. So look out for that. And then depending, sadly Kaiju won't be able to participate in this because he'll just be in a coma, is I definitely want to do a further back nostalgia show episode on our favorite shows from the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah, we're pretty much for him would just be Twilight Zone, I think.
Yeah, pretty much. Twilight Zone. He's actually processing if he knows any shows from that era that he's actually watched.
TV shows?
Yes. But we don't need to talk about it now because that's a different episode. But nevertheless, thank you very much for joining us and let us know some of your favorite shows while he is booting up to figure out what he's doing. Bye!